Oh. Hello. This is Kevin with Banger Inc. And today's session, I'm going to be joined with Christopher Bold. That's going to kind of help go through some of the material with us here. So this session is going to basically be some of the foundation stuff of just getting prepared for that year end topic that rolls around each year. So basically, there's few points that we're going to really take a look at. So one of them is going to be some prep work that you can start doing now. So there's a few things that you can do just to make sure that you've got your hardware set and things of that nature a little bit. Also some things that we can make sure that employees know about information and so forth. What the actual upgrade processes look like, and then some kind of key, events as far as when things typically happen, just so you have an idea of, when would I do what type of response.
Um, so one thing that you want to think of when you're working with your year-end prep is we're going to need to make sure that we've got the hardware and the software in place from just a Windows and workstation perspective, as well as your server. Uh, one one piece of major concern this year as well as last year is Windows 11 is actually not supported by any of the Sage Construction Real Estate Suite. So that's going to cover Sage 100, Sage 300, and Sage Estimating. So that's all of our Sage clients except those that might have moved to Intact. So when you think to prepare for that upgrade, try to make sure that none of your workstations are on Windows 11. There's some issues known. There's no guarantee any particular function will work. So try not to update to Windows 11 if you can. For the most part, your servers should be fine. There hasn't been a new version of Windows Server released. So as long as you're not still on Windows Server 20 or 2008 R2, generally you should be okay. Specifically, you're going to be able to use on your server 2012 R2, 2016, and 2019. On your workstations, you're generally going to be able to use Windows 8.1 and Windows 10, but again, not Windows 11. As you're thinking about prepping your software side of things, you want to make sure that you're looking at any of your integrated software vendors, as well as your Sage integrated tools when you're thinking about, is it compatible with the new version, or do I need to wait? So you're going to think of things like Sage Estimating, Sage Paperless Construction, My Assistant, Office Connector, Procore, HH2, TimberScan, anything that is going to be touching your Sage accounting data. You'll want to make sure that that version is compatible with your new version, or that there is a compatible version that you can upgrade to once you've upgraded your Sage accounting software. You're also going to want to make sure that your Windows updates have been completed for your workstation as well as your server before we get started or before you get started. It's going to save you a lot of time during the upgrade process. And then on the server, you're going to want to make sure you have enough storage space to hold the backup of your Sage accounting data. So you're going to want to make a backup immediately prior to running the actual upgrade process. And that is going to require at least one time the size of your existing data storage. That's just your Sage data. So if you've got a bunch of files that aren't part of your Sage upgrade or Sage, or not Sage upgrade, but your Sage data, you don't need to worry about that. You're looking at your Sage data folders and your Sage 9.5 folder. And if we could move to the next slide. You're also going to want to make sure that you're prepping your employees as well as just kind of making sure that you have a few other pieces in place as well. So as far as employee prep goes, everybody's going to need to be out of Sage during the entire upgrade process. This hasn't changed year over year, but sometimes I've run into clients where that that kind of becomes a surprise. But it's going to be everybody out. The process usually takes 3 to 4 hours, sometimes a little bit longer, depending on how that file upgrade looks. You're also going to need a Windows administrative username and password for the server and any workstations that are being updated. You will need to be able to access the server desktop. That's not just your file shares on your server, that's actually logging into the server and making application changes. So you'll need to actually be able to log into Windows there. That can be through remote access or through just walking up to the physical server and logging in. In either case, you'll need that. And that may require your IT provider to be available for assistance. You should be notifying your IT provider regardless whether or not you need them to be part of the upgrade process. You should be letting them know that you are going to be upgrading, and you should have that schedule as far as the upgrade, whether you're engaging Bangert for those services or performing the upgrade yourself. Having that scheduled and your IT provider aware is going to be a major help if you run into any sort of situation where you do need the IT provider. You're also, after you've run the software update, going to need a Sage administrative username and password in order to run the file upgrade. File upgrade is going to be required in almost every case. And then a final note as you prep your workstations and your employees, everybody needs to know that their workstation is going to be restarted, and you're also going to be restarting your Sage server. That happens at the end of the installation process. So you'll restart your server first, and then you'll install your workstations, and those will be restarted at the end of that process.
So that information was common for both product lines. So primarily the Sage 100 construction and the Sage 300 CRE, those were similar enough that we basically just had some common slides. So, whichever product you're really working on, those, are pretty relevant. These, we've kind of went into more detail about each specific one. So I'm going to start with the Sage 300 side of it. So the upgrade process itself, kind of what it looks like usually, is doing backups to start with. So the main backups that we're primarily concerned with Sage 300 is something called application data and company data. So application data is when you look at your server, there's a Timberline Office share on everybody's server. Inside of that Timberline Office folder, there is actually a 9.5 folder that basically stores all the application data. So application data are things like, custom reports, tax tables, inquiries, miscellaneous formulas and so forth, things that security, things that are basically goes across multiple companies. The company data you could think of as when you first log into Sage. Once you log in, it comes up with a screen that shows you all the different companies you have. So the company data is basically company specific. So some of you might just have one folder and a backup or a test area or something like that. Others may have many folders. So, during the backup process, those are the main things that we're looking for, is all the application data to be backed up and all the company data to be backed up. There's an install process on the server itself that, probably takes somewhere about 30, 45 minutes to install on the server and so forth. So, like Christopher said earlier, clear backup. Usually we're going to go through, if we're helping with the upgrade, we're going to start off by really checking and making sure that all the users are out of Sage and all the data folders with the pervasive monitor. We're going to do our backups. Then we're going to install our upgrade on the server and so forth. Once the upgrade is completed on the server, it's going to require a restart. So that's the other thing that Christopher had said is, we got to make sure that everyone realizes that, they're going to have to be completely out of Sage the whole entire time. And there's going to be a few, server reinstall or restarts and, possibly workstations that might also interrupt, their Excel and Word and other things that they might be doing while this migration is going on. Then once we get the server back up and restarted, we're going to upgrade the data. So within tools, there's an option to upgrade data where we're going to go through and upgrade all the company data folders and so forth. Depending on what modules you own, some things need to be opened up on the server before they get opened up on any workstations and so forth. So the next thing that we normally like to do is open up any software that needs to prior to its being its first time use. So service management, I have not seen the year-end update yet, so I don't really know if that's going to be an upgrade associated with service management or purchasing or inventory yet. So basically, they may just open up. They may also come up and say, service management needs to be upgraded and run through a upgrade process of the data. That's why those need to be opened up on the server first, just to make sure if there's any upgrading of the data that is needed. Same concept for whether it's purchasing or inventory, or if you own both. Same concept with those modules. So basically, I'd want to open up. Doesn't matter. You wouldn't have to open up both. If you own both, it's pretty much one or the other because they share the same data set, but we need to open up at least one of the modules and make sure that, opens up and it doesn't have to upgrade the data or set up any new DSNs or anything of that nature. This is also where we need to think about, are there other softwares that might be needing to be upgraded at the same time? So Sage Estimating usually works with multiple versions of accounting. So very seldom do we have to upgrade Sage Estimating at the exact same time anymore. But so things like My Assistant, most of the time we do My Assistant upgrades at the same time as year end. So if there's an upgrade that was associated with My Assistant, a lot of time we'll get those installed at the same time. Some of the products out there like Sage Paperless, they have their own upgrade process and so forth. I think they work with multiple versions of Sage in most cases. So it's just something that is handy to kind of double check on if there's any upgrades or anything that might be needed of those softwares. A lot of time it's handy to get, while everybody's out of the software, get everything, kind of up to speed at the same time possibly. And then once we get the server basically where it's up and stable and, all the data looks good and so forth, that's where then we'll go around to the different workstation installs and same type of thing. It's going to take between 15 minutes and 45 minutes per machine to do. Once it gets done, it's going to restart. Multiple workstations can be done at the same time. This is also one of the things we've got on the slide there is probably, if you have any terminal servers, remote desktop servers, that's also where a lot of time we'll get those installs done after the server's up and going and stable. Key events for Sage 300. So with Sage 300, there's three main things that people do during what kind of gets rolled into the one topic. And it gets kind of confusing because not all of them have to be done at the exact same time. So basically we do closing of the year, we upgrade tax tables, and we've got W-2s and 1099s and our government reporting to do. So basically I've kind of we broke this off into the three separate bullets, and we'll kind of get into the specifics of each one of these. So with closing of the year, there's not a right or wrong with it. So most people are going to probably be somewhere about the same time they close a month. So, there's some people that January 1st, they're going to have already closed the year, be all ready for the new year, go forward. Most companies, it probably takes the first week or week and a half to kind of get things caught up or get things where they're prepared to close the year and so forth. I might get some information from the accountant and make some, last minute journal entries or things of that nature. But basically, whatever that is about the timing. So it's real similar with closing of the month, I think. The version of the software of Sage that you have to be on for 300 is any version. So a lot of time when people hear, oh, we're talking about the year-end process and we're talking about an update that has to be installed, some people kind of wrap all these together and they say, oh, I got to get that done before I can close my year. And that is not necessarily the case. So you can close the year on whatever version of Sage 300 that you're on. So the biggest thing is just making sure that you've got all your, GL and all the reporting and things like that I've got need for the year and so forth. And other than that, it's about like a normal month. Updating payroll tax tables. So with the tax tables, when do I do that? So tax tables are basically just that. They're the tax tables. There again, they have nothing to do with a particular version in a lot of cases. So, once I get done with my last 2022 payroll, and usually before my first, 2023 payroll, that's when most people are going to do it. So a lot of time, they get this year closed off. They're got everything rolled over and ready for the new year and so forth. A lot of times somewhere in there before they do that payroll, they're going to do it. Now, the timing on that also is a little gray because a lot of time, if I don't get it done for the first payroll, a lot of the taxes doesn't change so drastically that, that's going to be a catastrophic change of numbers or anything of that nature. But, somewhere in there, I think most people try to get it done before that first 2023 payroll. The biggest thing to kind of keep in mind is that we don't forget it. Because I have seen some companies go through and, not update their tax tables, and then they're calculating things wrong, or they're not getting the right, breaks of when some of the taxes stop and so forth, or hit their caps. So the version, like I said, really about anything. So version 18 was a pretty old version. I'm not even sure, but I think it might even be able to go back older than that for tax table updates. So the main thing is, there again, I don't have to do any of this installing software or anything of that nature for those two tasks. So at that point, both of those can be done just when you're ready as a company. Print W-2s and 1099s. So let's say that I'm a company that my accountant does my 1099s and W-2s for me, and we don't do them at all. So if you do not produce those yourself through Sage with the HX product and things like that incorporated into the 300 product, you don't necessarily have to install the year-end update right away and install it, whenever you want, ready for the next version and things like that. So the biggest thing here is if you do produce W-2s and 1099s out of Sage, most people are probably going to be somewhere after they get done with, all their 2022 stuff. And you've got to get it done. My understanding of as far as what I could find is this year looks like it's going to be the same as last year, that it's going to be, all the W-2s are supposed to be up by, January 31st. So, I envision we're going to have some clients that I know are going to get their upgrade loaded, probably the last week of December, because they're going to, as soon as that last payroll's done, they're closing things up and they're going to, have the update loaded and produce their W-2s and 1099s. And probably most clients will be somewhere between, that January 1st or the last week of December and, that last week of January for the timing. Version. I'm not exactly sure the exact version. My understanding is going to be 22 point something. So that will be released somewhere in mid-December. So I think last year it was like the second week of December. I think even the year before that was the second week of December. The year before that, I think it was like the third or something of that nature. So somewhere, around that mid few weeks is going to be where that release will be out. So you definitely won't want to, generate any of this reports, before any of that, which I don't think the timing is possible anyway, since a lot of time you won't have your payroll done or things like that. So basically, these two functions are not concerned about the year-end release. The year-end release is primarily for the ability to print the most current W-2s and 1099s and whatever other changes they might have to make to payroll for the new 2023 season and so forth.
And so really similar to the Sage 300 process, the Sage 100 process is going to have a lot of the same steps and a lot of the same kind of key events as you go to close your year and do your upgrades and things. The idea with Sage 100 is going to be, it's basically the same thing, but slightly simplified. So on the Sage 100 side, where Sage 300 has a separation of application data and company data. Sage 100 really stores everything in just kind of one spot. So you're going to back up your company data, and that actually covers the application data that's separate in Sage 300. So you'll make a backup for each company. And then you'll work on installing your upgrade on the server. You'll get your data upgraded after the upgrade occurs on the server. Then you'll want to check in again to those integrated vendors. That's where that step comes into play, is after you've gotten your install and your data upgraded. And you'll work on your workstation installs. And that kind of the software that might need upgrading on the server that's not your Sage accounting software and the workstation installs, those two steps kind of fall around the same spot. So you might work on both at the same time. We kind of, if we look at some details with it, we're going to follow a slight variation on the Sage 100 spot, where Kevin was saying we're going to check that everybody's out. Part of making those backups does try to ensure that everybody's out of the system already with Sage 100. So it's not quite as stringent and manual with the Sage 100 upgrade. So it is something that's just a little bit simpler. And if we move on to the key events, and we can actually bring all those up, and we'll talk about the differences. So the key events with Sage 100, they're actually kind of reduced again. Same idea, same thing, but simpler. With Sage 100, you're generally going to close your year about the same time, and you're generally going to want to get your payroll taxes updated about the same time. The difference, though, between Sage 300 and Sage 100 is going to be that Sage 300 separates a payroll tax table update from the software update, whereas Sage 100 has those tax tables hard coded in the system. So what we find with that is the idea of when we want to perform the software upgrade is a little bit more narrow of a window with Sage 100, where Sage 300 is anytime after that release through to when the W-2s and 1099s are due. The whole update for Sage 100 is pretty much after your last 2022 payroll and before your W-2s and 1099s are due. The same idea kind of follows through with the Sage 300 payroll tax table updates, where as a generality, that first month, if you didn't have the updated tax tables, your rates are probably not changing. It's probably just the caps. And those really, you're not going to be hitting those caps by the end of the first month of the year. So it's not something where you have to freak out if you can't get your upgrade completed before the first payroll of 2023. However, you do want to make sure you get those before the end of the month so that you can get your W-2s and 1099s out. So you'll wait a little bit longer to do your upgrade with Sage 100, and then you'll get your W-2s and 1099s out after you do that upgrade. Otherwise, it follows very similarly on Sage 100 as Sage 300. So pretty much everything that Kevin covered for Sage 300 is applicable to Sage 100, with the exception of tying the payroll tax table update to the software update. And then we've also been joined by Reed, who's going to cover how to engage Bangert services for year-end assistance, if that's something you need.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate you. The intro, Kevin, Christopher, thank you guys so much for previewing this. So a couple of things. The first and foremost, if you need help with closing out your year, updating your tax tables, or performing your upgrade, or W-2s and 1099s, the best way to get in touch with us is help@bangertinc.com. That's going to open you up a ticket for our year-end services. There is one thing I do want to point out, though, which is take advantage of our support plans. in the description of this video on our YouTube page, you will see a link to our support plans. But if you visit our website at bangertinc.com and head over to support plans, Sage 300 CRE, you can take advantage of any of our options. However, I do want to highlight Pro. Our Pro plan, it includes our year-end services. So everything from help with closing the year to your upgrades to your 1099s, getting those out the door, those types of things. That is included in our Pro plan. So I highly recommend our customers take advantage of it. If you're not our customer and you need assistance with 300 or 100, please reach out to us at help@bangertinc.com. We've helped thousands of companies with their year end and hundreds of companies every year. So thank you, Kevin and Christopher, for the insightful information. I appreciate you taking the time, and thanks, everyone.